Hi everybody, this is Miss Quammen. I am going to take you through my process for acrylic painting. So the first thing I do is prepare my space. I have my table covered in brown craft paper. Regular old newspaper works fine. Or if you're working at a table that doesn't mind if it gets dirty, no need to cover. Got my canvas here. 3 primary colors plus black and white will allow me to mix pretty much any hue my heart desires. Got your large and small brush and your palette knife that you got in your materials kit. Yours might not look exactly like mine. There's 3 different styles of big brush, and it was random which one you got. And there's 5 different shapes of palette knives, and it was random which one you got. So if yours isn't the same as mine, that's why. The small brushes you have, everybody has size 00. I just happen to have one with a thick handle here, but it's the same size tip. This is the palette paper where you'll mix your colors. Make sure you're using this with the shiny side up. Only one side is shiny, and that's where you want to mix your colors. I also gave you a paper towel. This isn't for cleanup. This is actually a tool we're going to be using as we work. The only thing you need to find and add yourself is a water cup. I'm using just a regular old mason jar. All right, so I'm thinking about what colors I want to have in my painting, and I'm envisioning a turquoise green, which is a favorite color of mine. So I know that blue and yellow make green, so I'm going to start with these 2. Now, do not dump your colors out. You're going to make a big mess. You're not going to have any control. Instead, use your palette knife to, with control, take just a little bit. And you can actually smoosh most of that paint off your palette knife, so you waste very little. And do not leave the lid off because your blue is going to dry out. Once you got some of the color you need, click the lid back on. Now, if I dip this palette knife in the yellow, I am going to contaminate the yellow with the blue that's on the knife. So that's why you have your cloth-like paper towel here, just to wipe the excess paint off of your palette knife. See? Clean. There's a little bit of a stain on there you could scrub, but it's not going to contaminate my yellow. And I didn't even have to use my water cup yet. So let's see. I'm going to scoop some yellow with my palette knife. I'm not going to plop it in the middle of the blue because then I'm not really going to have much control of how they're mixing. Instead, I'm going to put it next to it on my palette. And I'm going to put away yellow paint. Okay, so now here's the fun part of having a palette knife, is using it to mix the colors. So I already have some yellow on my knife, and I'm going to add just a little bit of blue to it. So this is mostly yellow and small amount of blue. And now I'm going to start mixing those colors together. You can turn your palette knife sideways. The reason a palette knife is great for mixing colors is because when you're trying to mix with a brush, these bristles absorb so much of the paint, and it can actually get sucked up under the metal part called the ferrule. So I would advise you never use your brushes for mixing. Use a palette knife. That's what they're for. All right, so I have this really bright spring green, and I want to mellow it down a little bit. I also want to make it more turquoise. So I'm going to put a bit more blue in it to bring it a little closer to blue. All right, yeah, that's a little better. A bit more blue. So see how I'm adding little by little so I can control. And if you run out of the little bit of yellow or blue that you put on your palette, of course you can open up your cups and get more if you need. But remember, this paint dries out quickly, so it's better to use just a bit and add more if you need it, because it's very difficult to stop it from drying out before you can use it all if you do mix a large amount. So now I've got this at a middle green, and I'm going to go ahead and add all the blue I brought. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is closer to what I was hoping for. I think I am going to add some more blue. So I'm just push all my paint into a little pile, wipe as much of the paint off my palette knife onto my palette as I can, and then use that paper towel. I've got a little bit of yellow on this top of this knife too, so there. Now I'm going to add even more blue to this, but not right in the middle. I'm going to put it next to it, and then with control, add just the right amount. paint holds closed when not in use. All right. Okay, I am in love with this color. I'm ready. And not every artist has the same process. You might want to mix a couple colors first and then start applying them to the canvas. But I feel like just, look at that. I'm ready. And I'm going to trust my intuition and go in with the palette knife. You don't have to use a paintbrush at all in your painting. You can also let the colors mix right on the canvas. And I feel like I want to stand up, so I'm getting up off my stool and I'm standing here at my desk because I want to let the motion of my arm sort of guide these brush marks here. Okay, and now I feel like I want to have some lighter green going on in this as well. So to save this gorgeous color, I want to make sure I wipe that onto my palette, not onto my paper towel. Okay, now clean off my palette knife. And I'm going to go ahead and put some white next to the green. Close up my white. And I'm going to gently start to stir this white and green together. I'm thinking it's going to be a kind of minty color. All right, I'm ready to put this on the canvas too. And if you're applying another color on top of what you've already put down, they can mix as you're applying the paint. And I truly am not trying to make this look like anything. I like turning the canvas as I'm working on an abstract piece. It is fine to do that. Sometimes it's difficult to decide, even myself as the artist, which direction is up in my finished paintings. Hear the sound it makes? It's just so satisfying. And since we're working on a stretched canvas, you get a nice little spring of the tension of that stretched canvas bouncing a bit as you apply the paint. Stirring. So this one has a little bit more yellow in it here. And when I am mixing a new color to add to my painting, I try to think about that color in relationship to the whole canvas. So this color I just made, so far I've only put it over here in this section. I also want to bring it out across the canvas this way. It's up to you if you want to have a color evenly distributed across your composition, or if you're going to have just a pop of it in one location. I'm feeling like to balance out this brighter yellow green, I want to bring it in on this side as well. But I'm out of, I'm out of yellow on my canvas here, so I got to get a little more. Oops, I got a little contamination in there. I should have cleaned the top of my palette knife. Here's what you do. Get a clean knife and scoop that out. That you can still use because it's mixed with the colors you're using already. So accidents happen, doesn't mean you have to throw out your whole yellow. I'm going to go ahead and try to scoop that bit out too. That's fine. So if that happens to you, don't panic. Close up my yellow. I don't want to use pure yellow, so I'm going to stir it up. There we go. That's pretty close to what I had on the other side. See, I'm holding it next to it to check the hue. And some artists choose to leave some of the raw canvas showing in between their brush or their knife marks. It's totally up to you if you want to cover the whole canvas. Okay, I'm really starting to have covered the canvas. In my work, I do choose to cover up the raw canvas entirely. So far, I had only been using blue, yellow, and white for the majority of the first layer. And as you saw, I just decided to bring in some black. Now, I'm realizing that in order to really have this feel complete in terms of the colors I've used, I'm also going to need to bring in some of the primary red here. Now, I don't want to have any, I don't want to go too crazy here. So I just got a little bit. So a very small amount of that red on my palette knife. And I'm going to actually mix that in with the minty color I have. Adding red to your green will bring it closer to a brown or a neutral. So I'm still staying in the green hue. However, I'm lowering the intensity by adding the red. So it's a more brownish green. Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is something that my painting was definitely missing. I wasn't crazy about that black brush mark that I had put there, but part of the beauty and joy of working with acrylic paint is you don't like it, just let it dry and paint right over it. If you try to do it while the bottom layer is still wet, it's going to mix a bit, which I wanted here, but you can also like let it dry completely and paint over it, and it will totally cover up what you want it to. I like that color and I want to bring more of it in. I remember it had white, blue, and yellow, and then I added a tiny bit of red. So I'm going to recreate that color. There's my white. I already have yellow and red on the canvas. on the palette, excuse me. So now I'm going to, I just need to add the blue. Ooh, I haven't added the red yet, but I love how this looks. I gotta use it. So again, I'll say trust your intuition, like go with the flow. You don't have to have a plan for this. And it doesn't have to be done until you're satisfied with it. Okay. I like those not quite mixed brush marks where there's still those little streaks of the separate hues in there. Bring in a little more of that there. Now, I do want to caution you against over-mixing your colors, because if you just stir all of them together, you're going to end up with a muddy brown, which, you know, if that's what you're going for, then wonderful. But having a little bit of restraint in how much you mix can keep the colors more bright and vibrant, if that's the look you're going for. And I can't stress enough that there is no right or wrong. Yours doesn't have to look like mine, and it doesn't have to look like what any artist from the past has created. In fact, part of what the contemporary art world thinks of as a successful artist is somebody who uses paint and other art materials in new ways and does something original. I love that brush mark. I have to remind myself not to go over the top of that one. Okay, now just because you mix a color doesn't mean you have to use it. I just mixed this kind of like berry mauve, and it's nice enough, but I don't know that... Actually, I used just a bit. I don't want to overpower. But if you decided you didn't want to use the color you mixed, don't use it. That's okay. And I love this trick of just holding the paint on your palette knife over a spot and deciding if that is what you want to put there. So I do have the super neutral hue right now. That's somewhere right in between green and red, mixed with a ton of white. Do think about making your paint, well, think about the relationship of your paint to the edge where the canvas wraps around the board. You can continue your brush marks right over the edge. Here is another painting that I made where I wrapped my design right around the edge of the canvas. That can be a little bit tricky. If you decide that you want to do it now. Like I would, this color I'm using here, just continue it right here in the moment, because although it's possible to try to match all your edge hues later to paint the edges, it's a pain in the butt. So if you're going to go with that effect, I recommend doing it while you have the color freshly mixed. Here's another abstract painting I did, and in much of my work, I like to paint the edges of the canvas black. I feel like it gives it a really nice professional looking frame. You might also choose to do something different with the edges of your canvas. And again, I welcome innovation and originality. So, up to you. Artist's choice. So, perhaps you've noticed that I have not picked up the brush since I've done this painting. I like to do the entire first session of my painting with the palette knife. You can do the painting from start to finish without ever using a brush. You'll notice that because I haven't used a brush, I also haven't used my water cup. Palette knife just makes for a super low mess cleaning process, painting process. It can be tempting to just use the paint that's on your palette because it's convenient and it's there. However, remember that you are in control of what colors you're using, and if your palette does not have the color you want, it is worth the time to stop and get it out. Berry pink that I wasn't sure if I was even going to use. I see it in just 3 little spots, and I want more of it right here. So I'm going to go back to that color. Remember, it was with the minty green with a tiny bit of red added to it. Okay, but now that I made this minty green, I love it, and I want to put it here. I need more red. It's the right value in terms of light to dark, but it's a little more brown than pink, which means the ratio has more green. So I just want to balance it by adding a little bit more red. I'll go ahead and take out a little more than I need now, so I've got some for later. So now I have a little more red on my knife. That matches quite nicely. I should set my red down before I spill it. I am satisfied for now with this first layer, and I'm going to let this dry. I'm definitely not finished with the painting, but for now, I want to let everything that's here dry. It'll probably be dry in about an hour, but you might be done for the day. And to clean up, I just want to make sure that I don't let this paint dry on my palette knife. So I'm going to just wipe that onto my paper towel over here. But leave the paper towel and leave your palette. Leave your canvas. Let it all sit there and dry. You can reuse that palette paper. If you want to try to clean it up a little bit, you can scrape your paint up. I think I'm just going to let mine dry like this, and next time I need more paint, I'm going to put it back in the same spots again. That's it for now. See, my palette knife is almost fully clean, but I'm actually going to go take this and clean it up in the sink because I like to take good care of my tools. If you're cleaning up a paintbrush or a palette knife, a little bit of dish soap from the kitchen will be great for just scrubbing off that little bit of extra paint that's stuck on there. But I do want you to make sure you wipe off all the blobs of paint because it's not good to put that down the drain. So we're just going to leave all this here to dry. I'm going to go wash my palette knife, and then I will see you guys on the next painting session.